Pete Hegseth calls up top military brass, generals, top military advisors to Quantico for an emergency meeting early next week. This is hot off the press. And this is one of the reasons you need to watch Leak Project, because yesterday we did a live stream where I decided to start jamming out to Ozzy Osbourne's, generals gather in their masses, just like witches at black masses. And anyway, the whole generals gather in masses, that's kind of coming to mind right now. So we're kind of ahead of the curve. So that was the day before this information is released via media. But what has happened in the past when there's been these emergency meetings? We're going to look at some very eerie parallels. And this is going to take place shortly after the Pentagon says, you want to share news? Well, you got to ask us first. Yeah, we're going to get into the details on that. Very interesting. But also 2 different airports, Denmark and Norway, and this happened twice at an airport in Denmark, large drones flying over airspace out there, shutting down the airports, shutting down flights. So a lot's going on. I really doubt that they're extraterrestrial, folks. There's probably much more likely explanation here closer to home. But let's talk about this, because this is very important. And, did you know about this? A lot of people have no idea that this is going on, and their mind's somewhere else right now. So this could be one of the biggest pieces of news hot off the press that we have a chance to talk about. And also, I do want to give a huge shout out to Boomer Boost. So use the code REX20. You'll get 20% off your order. You can also stack discount codes if you do auto ship. They've got some sales right now there as well. So just go to boomerboost.com, use the code REX20, click the link in the video description box. That way they'll know how you heard about them. But so I take this stuff daily. As you can see, I've got 3 more of these upstairs. This one's almost out. I've got like a scoop left, but I've just got it down here to show you guys and gals. But let me just put this into perspective. So is Boomer Boost a sponsor? Yes. Do I still buy the products from Boomer Boost with my own money? Yes. So if I'm getting low on Boomer Boost and Gladiator Barley, I order 2 or 3 more. And I look for the discounts. I look for the sells. And if there isn't a sell going on, I do it anyway, because this stuff's seriously that amazing. Now, today, Diamond called me up last night. He said, hey, I need your help today. I need to move a bunch of firewood. I need to load up a bunch of firewood. So I meet him about 15 minutes from the house. Then we go to this really cool place I didn't even know about. This is where I'm going to get my firewood now. But it's this huge logging business, and he's got a 10,000-pound trailer. We stack the thing like Tetris. We fill it up like Tetris. And within an hour and a half, we had that thing totally full. And that's probably what most people would spend about 5 or 6 hours doing. So we knocked it out in an hour and a half. And I'll tell you what, the Boomer Boost and the Gladiator Barley is amazing. Okay, quick shameless plug. I'm serious, though, when I say I absolutely love this stuff. Get yours, boomerboost.com, and get the Gladiator Barley as well. And let's jump into the news, because we've got a lot to talk about. Hello. And Nanu, appreciate you all being here. I'm going to do a screen share here. We've got a lot of notes that you're going to want to look at. So check it out. Pete Hegseth, the U.S. Secretary of Defense, has unexpectedly summoned hundreds of senior military officers, generals, admirals, top military advisors, 1-star and up. They're going to meet next week at the Marine Corps base Quantico in Virginia, AP News. The directive gives no stated agenda or explanation. Pentagon spokesman Sean Parnell confirmed the meeting would happen and that Hegseth will address senior military leaders, but declined to provide additional details. The move is being described by observers as highly unusual for its scope, secrecy, and the fact that so many top military officials are being drawn into a single in-person gathering versus remote or distributed meetings. That's very interesting. So take note of that. This meeting comes amid a backdrop of disruptive personnel moves at the Pentagon under Hegseth, dismissals of senior officials and officers, cuts to top ranks, and organizational shakeups. So what could this potentially mean? They haven't given us the full explanation or even much of an explanation yet. So here are some theories. Here's some ideas. Reasserting control, loyalty assessments. Given controversies over firings and leadership changes, this meeting could be a way for Hegseth to consolidate authority, send messages about alignment or loyalty, and reshape the power structure. There could be major policy or strategic shift announcements. It might be used as a vehicle to roll out new defense priorities, reassignments, reorganizations, or doctrinal changes. The in-person format may signal that the changes are significant. Yeah, and they want to keep it on the down low. They don't want to share any of it via electronic or as little as they can so it doesn't get intercepted. There are also a potential for addressing internal concerns, moral alignment with widespread uncertainty from prior abrupt dismissals. This meeting could aim to calm or redirect the top ranks, set new expectations, or reset the tone. Now, the timing of this is very interesting because if you remember the video yesterday, President Trump is at the UN meeting, and he declares this new AI system that's going to be rolled out. And he says it could be great. It could be one of the great things. It could also, some people think that it could be dangerous. And it kind of sounds like, if you read the Bible and Revelation, it kind of sounds like the potential for some type of hardcore surveillance technology, which could eventually lead to the mark of the beast. Now, that's obviously metaphoric, and there's a lot of different ideas for what that mark is. But when you look at the rollout of these massive data centers and 6G, sixth generation communications, which plans to merge man and machine, terahertz range technologies combined with artificial intelligence potentially being used to decide if somebody is safe or not, or if somebody is looked at as a threat. And then they'll have a code, potentially like a threat matrix code on each individual. And so, a lot of people feel like this new freedom. So in California, there's a new bill that's been presented in California, which could potentially fine social media platforms $1 million based upon information that could potentially be deemed incorrect or harmful according to this bill. Now, we need to get a lawyer on to explain the details, but it seems like a very real possibility that this slippery slope of freedom of expression could be in serious danger, and it has been in the past. However, still in the US, we have a lot more rights when it comes to freedom of expression than many other countries, especially when it's linked to social media. But the reason I'm bringing this up to you is because there has been a lot of talk about, there's more freedom of speech now. We can share more information on Facebook and other social media platforms. And although that may be true, still you want to be very careful, because remember, everything you post in social media can and potentially will be used against you, whether it's an artificial intelligence connecting you to some type of threat matrix, or they collect this information. And then how easy would it be if they decided in the future that this information needed to be suppressed again, and they could take all that data that you've uploaded and decide how much of, do we need to put that person in the thought camp? Does that person need to enter thought camp? Well, he's only a threat matrix 4 from a scale from 1 to 10. So we'll leave him be until he hits 5. And then we'll start sending custom tailored memes to his Facebook posts so that it will condition his mind like Pavlov's dog. But anyway, that's for a whole other podcast. Let's get back to this. So major policy, potentially strategic shift announcements, addressing internal concerns, crisis response or classified issue. This is what I think this meeting could potentially be. Because we've had the conflict now with Ukraine and Russia, and then now Trump is telling NATO, hey, if Russia's flying in your airspace, you should shoot him down. So we don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but we know what the media is telling us. And the media is also being suppressed as far as what they can share at the Pentagon or information connected to the Pentagon. And we're going to get into that in a minute. So whether it's good or bad, or whether it has anything to do with freedom of speech or more to do with controlling information if we are potentially going to war. Now, China's been kind of quiet lately. It seemed like China was much more active in the media anyway, back during the Biden administration. Now it seems like it's a lot more geared towards Ukraine and Russia and conflict in the Middle East, the Gaza Strip and Israel. So there's been clearly a shift in the media and the portrayal of war and conflict. But we're also dealing with Venezuela right now, and narcotic shipments coming through Venezuela. There's been military strikes on Venezuela. And so I'm putting all this information together in my head, and I'm thinking, okay, what is the future scenario? What is the future outcome of this going to be? So now that we've got this meeting, this big time meeting with top military brass, and the fencing that appears to be going on in the media headlines, this could be very serious. I mean, I personally do not like to spread fear, and I like to say, hey, take all this information as a theory or an idea. Don't take it as fact. Do your own research. But potentially, this could be a very, very big deal, and that's why I wanted to share this with you today, because I think that this is the most important information that's out there right now. So, security and logistics. Let's go on to 4 and 5 here. So the secrecy and the urgency raise the possibility of a pressing security or operational matter requiring direct top-level coordination. And then also political signaling. The scale and drama of the gathering might also serve as a signal to Congress, the White House, or external audiences about who's in charge and the new direction of the Pentagon. Nanu. So some risks and concerns. Security and logistics. Bringing many senior leaders together physically poses risks. Obviously, security, travel, the concentration of key personnel in one location, especially when many commands are dispersed worldwide. Some have questioned why secure communications or teleconferencing are not being used. And to me, I think it would be in some ways more dangerous as far as that information getting out if you're sharing it electronically, even if it's encrypted, as they say. How well does encryption work? And do all encryptions work against everything? Probably not. Internal friction and morale. Sudden shifts and unexplained firings have already unsettled parts of the military. This meeting may exacerbate stress, confusion, or resistance. Institutional norms. Critics view this as further erosion of the military, a political, nonpartisan tradition. The lack of transparency and suddenness raise red flags for civil-military relations. Operational disruption. Recalling senior leaders globally may temporarily affect command, continuity, deployments, and readiness. Public and political scrutiny. With the lack of clarity, Congress, media, and defense stakeholders will likely press for explanations and oversight. So the Washington Post, Reuters, Axios. So there could potentially be major cuts in senior ranks. In May of this year, Hegseth ordered a sharp reduction in the number of generals and admirals, a 20% cut in 4-star officers, plus additional cuts across flag general officer ranks. These cuts have been criticized as blunt and risky, given the way they were announced and the lack of detail about how roles would be reassigned or missions preserved. Structural and doctrinal shifts. Yeah, we talked about that. So here's some key interpretations. Potentially reassertion of control, like a loyalty check, announcing major structural changes, declaring a new national defense strategy, force posture, signal to Congress, the White House, external audiences, intimidation, purge preparation. This is actually what I was thinking about putting on the thumbnail. The purge begins. But that was a little intense, right? I'm like, should I put the purge on there? Because it kind of feels like it. Like, are they getting ready for some type of purge? Well, I mean, I'm not the only one thinking it, obviously, and signal a deeper politicization. I mean, could you imagine if in the next couple of months they declare war with Russia, or NATO declares war with Russia? They're preparing. They're definitely getting ready. And I've talked to some people behind the scenes that say that it could be closer, that have some, I would say, pretty good knowledge about the situation because of what they do anyway. So yeah, possible agendas, topics to watch for: personal announcements, strategic roadmap, command reorganization, new performance, ideology standards, public relations, optics control, AP News, Politico. Now, they also have declared, I think Hegseth did, and the Pentagon, they're going to disassociate themselves with a multitude of think tanks, which is interesting. Suspension of think tank engagements. Earlier in 2025, the Pentagon formally suspended its I need to put my reading glasses on. Participation in think tanks and research events. The move is often read as part of a broader information lockdown, limiting external critique, reducing leaks, and controlling narratives. But this is one of the things. So let's look at some historic precedents. This is, I think, really important. Let's look at what has happened in the past when these events have taken place. So back in 1951, relief of General Douglas MacArthur. President Truman relieved General MacArthur for publicly deviating from administration policy during the Korean War, a landmark assertion of civilian control over the military. The MacArthur case remains a touchstone. The military must not overshadow civilian policy. Hegseth's recall of senior officers and abrupt changes echo that tension, though the scale and secrecy here are different. Secretive reorganizations and purges during wartime or crisis. In times of war or national crisis, leaders sometimes abruptly reorganize command structures, purge senior officers, or reassign units to ensure loyalty and agility. But those are typically justified publicly as emergency measures. Here, the lack of transparent rationale invites fear and suspicion. McNamara's centralizing reforms in the 1960s. Defense Secretary Robert McNamara centralized planning and budgeting authority at the Office of the Secretary of Defense, diminishing the influence of service branches and reorganizing decision processes. Hegseth's moves, abolishing strategic organs, limiting external input, reneging in promotions, echo a descendant of that approach, but with greater capacity and ideological overlay. So we could potentially see a shift in strategy, much more intense information control, personnel purge, strategic reorientation, and institutional erosion. Now, Russia came out and said basically that Russia's at war with NATO and the EU. Russian Foreign Ministry Sergei Lavrov claimed that NATO and the EU, through Ukraine, have declared war on Russia and are directly participating in the conflict. You read about that Newsweek. Lavrov's framing suggests that because NATO and the EU countries provide weapons, intelligence, and logistical support to Ukraine, Russia considers them co-belligerents rather than mere external backers. Russia often uses this rhetoric to blur the line between indirect support and direct action, effectively arguing that Western support for Ukraine transforms NATO and the EU from supporters into active belligerents. Well, I mean, are they wrong? I don't know. I'm not a military lawyer. I'm not a JAG, so I couldn't tell you. But I would like to read your comments. Are they wrong about that? I mean, I don't know. So I'm just sharing the information with you. But earlier, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov also said that because NATO is considering or engaging in actions such as intercepting or shooting down Russian aircraft in Allied airspace, Russia views those as acts of war. So interesting timing, to say the least. Now, this is also very interesting, the timing. So a cyber attack disrupted check-in and boarding systems at major European airports, including Heathrow in London, Brussels in Berlin, and others, AP News. Now, that's pretty serious. Like, imagine being able to tap into, if you were, how do I put this? If you were a foreign nation and you were like beta testing new technologies to see what type of disruptions you could cause electronically, airports, shutting down entire airports, that's a pretty big deal. They're shutting down entire airports with electronics, with massive drones, with GPS jammers. I mean, the new type of warfare that we're dealing with now is so much different than it was in World War II or World War I or Vietnam. And I don't just mean like, there's just so many different fronts. There's so many different ways that they can tap into causing disruption without sending physical troops on the ground. Like corporate espionage and all sorts of other things that can be done now in today's day and age. And with these supercomputers and technologies that can predict and calculate what's going to happen if, cause and effect type stuff, especially with quantum computers that are potentially trying to break the cause and effect matrix, where you can figure everything out based upon just the question. It'll give you the answer to the whole sum, if that makes sense. But so let's go back to this. A cyber attack disrupted check-in and boarding systems at major European airports, including Heathrow and Brussels. The systems affected are provided by Collins Aerospace. The affected software is known as Muse, passenger check-in, baggage tags, etc. The outage forced many airports to revert to manual check-ins and boarding procedures, slowing down flows, causing long queues, delays, and some cancellations. Heathrow in particular saw delays of up to 90% of its 350 plus flights, with the average delay around 34 minutes in some reports. Some airlines, like British Airways, reportedly was less affected because they had backup systems. As of the latest reports, the disruption is continuing. Airlines and airports are still waiting for full system restoration, with gradual recovery underway. So just another beta test, right? Let's just see what will happen. Now, this is the drone situation that's going on right now. So more reports of major drones, large drones over airports shutting down the airspace. So we've got Norway, we've got Denmark. The Oslo airport in Norway was shut down for about 3 hours overnight after a drone was reported in its airspace. And these aren't your typical hobby drones either. Copenhagen airport was shut down twice. It was closed for nearly 4 hours after sightings of 2 or 3 large drones. Reuters. And then later, Aalborg airport, which also serves commercially and military flights, was shut down for a few hours due to drone activity. And these are being listed as potential hybrid threats, sabotage, rather than mere nuisance violations. So when we look at in this in more detail, the Oslo airport was shut down for about 3 hours overnight after these drone observations in its airspace. Flights were diverted. After the shutdown, Norwegian police later seized a drone near Oslo airport and identified its owner. A man in his 50s was arrested. Officials in Norway suggested the size and flight behavior of the drones warranted suspicion of a national player rather than merely hobbyists. And then Copenhagen airport was closed for nearly 4 hours following reports of 2 or 3 large drones in its airspace. The drones were reported to have turned their lights on and off, maneuvered deliberately, and then vanished. About 50 flights were diverted. Delays and cancellations persisted after opening. And then the Aalborg. It's Aalborg Airport. The Aalborg Airport, serving both civilian and military flights, was shut down for 3 hours approximately due to similar drone sightings. The drones there reportedly stayed in the area from about 9:44 p.m. to 12:54 a.m. You're talking 3 hours plus. Eyewitnesses said the drones had green blinking lights. They were also observed near Esbjerg, Sunderborg, and Skrydstrup airports. Could you say that in Viking for me, please? Skrydstrup is particularly sensitive because it houses Denmark's fleet of F-16 and F-35 jets. So they're finding these things over very sensitive military sites as well, like usual. They're not alien drones. These are absolutely from an adversary. So Danish authorities have characterized the drone flyovers as hybrid attack, coordinated, professional, and intended to sow fear or disruption. The Danish police described the drones over Copenhagen as being flown by a capable operator, someone with skill, equipment, and intent. All affected airports were eventually reopened. Delays and residual disruptions remain. So no definitive attribution has been made yet. Norway and Denmark are coordinating investigations, but the link, if any, between the Norwegian and Danish incidents is not yet confirmed. And of course, Russia has denied involvement. They would never do such a thing. So in Copenhagen, I wanted to break this down a little bit more and see if we get some more details. So 2 to 3 large drones in Aalborg, more than one, possibly multiple drones. The drones are repeatedly described as large, though precise dimensions are not confirmed. They have blinking lights, turning lights on and off. In Aalborg, witnesses saw green blinking lights. Maneuvering in controlled ways, not just drifting. Intentional, directionally shifts appearing and disappearing. Some reports suggest they lingered over airspace for hours, almost 3 hours in Aalborg. And in Norway, officials emphasized this was not trivial or kids' tricks given the size and pattern. Danish police refer to capable operator controlling the Copenhagen drones, implying skill, equipment, and intentional, not international. Intentional planning. The synchronized nature of multiple overflights in Denmark suggests professional planning. So almost 4 hours in Copenhagen and around 3 hours in Norway. They think the purpose is disruption, signaling intimidation, testing air defenses, creating fear. Authorities are calling this hybrid warfare. See, we're getting more war in the news. This is hybrid warfare, they say. Hybrid warfare. Interesting. So they think that this is deliberate professional operations. It shows vulnerability in critical systems, amplifying symbolic value. No one is claiming responsibility yet. I want to know who the guy that they caught is. Like that dude that they caught that they think could be a national player. They don't say where he's from. Did you notice that? They said they got somebody. He's in his 50s. But they're not telling us anything else. It'd be nice to know more about that. And this is the information about the Pentagon and the press. So there's credible news reports that the Pentagon, under Secretary Pete Hegseth, has instituted new rules requiring press credential holders to pledge not to publish any information about the Department of Defense unless it has been approved for release, even if that information is unclassified. Interesting. Here's a breakdown of what's known, how it's being justified, and what the concerns are. Reporters covering the Pentagon are being asked to sign a pledge agreeing not to report any unapproved information, including unclassified material, without authorization. Violating this pledge could lead to revocation of press credentials or denial of access to Pentagon facilities. The policy seems to extend control over movement within the Pentagon, limiting where reporters can go unless they are escorted or have explicit authorization. The memo states information must be approved for public release by an appropriate authorizing official before it is released, even if it is unclassified. That's according to AP News. Reporters who refuse to sign the pledge may lose their building pass or be denied renewal of credentials. The Pentagon frames it as necessary for security and protecting sensitive information, claiming uncontrolled reporting, even of unclassified material, could harm U.S. operations or jeopardize personnel. Sounds like they're preparing for something big. So there's obviously a lot of disagreement about this, and media organizations have strongly criticized the policy as a form of prior restraint, that is censorship imposed before publication. The National Press Club said that if defense news must first be approved by officials, it is no longer independent reporting. And the Society of Professional Journalists called the policy alarming, saying that attempts to silence the press under secretary or security pretexts undermined democratic norms. So I just want to say, like, in my opinion, from following the news and being, researching the news and the way that it works and how it affects people, and how the meme news and the mainstream news and the alternative news affect people based upon their response and their thoughts and their actions. Like, there's only 5 or 6 organizations that control 90% of the media anyway. So it's not like, and before it was like, if you said something that they didn't want you to say, they would just, it was like that, the whole ban thing was going on. We'll ban them. Now it's like, well, we'll let you talk about a lot more stuff, but we're just not going to share it. Good luck people finding your page. Good luck people finding your channel, because you could talk about what you want to now, but guess what? Nobody's going to remember and nobody's going to find your link unless they go directly to it. So there's different ways that you can turn down the algorithm to make it difficult to find information, instead of just banning it now, or it's more like shadow ban. Well, yeah, that person's on an island over there and you're going to have to find a direct flight to get there, because we're not going to promote him on that island anymore. They may have 420,000 subscribers, but we're only going to share it with a few hundred. It's like, it's really easy when you have the keys to the algorithms to control the flow of information. But this is just adding more restrictions to freedom of press and freedom of news. Now, with that in mind, if there's something really big on the horizon, which it certainly seems like there could be, it seems like there's always something big on the horizon, but even more so now, if they have to do all of this to keep certain information tucked away because they've got really big plans ahead, like, I could see why they're doing it. And I'm not saying I agree with it, but you know what? I don't think it's much different than the way things have been for the past several years anyway with the mainstream news. It's propaganda machine. That's why I started Leak Project, because I saw 90% of the news out there was run by 5 or 6 corporations and people are regurgitating the same nonsense. So then I start, okay, well, let's do my own research. Let's come up with my own ideas and see what other people think, and then collective ideas and thoughts. But it's gotten to the point now where it used to be, there was that, I want to say, golden age with alternative media, where people that truly were excited about independent media and coverage were getting views and they were getting shared and people would really appreciate it. It was at a much higher level. It still is now. But if you look at the way things have changed with the algorithms over the past several years, especially when it comes to media and alternative media, the majority of the views are going to be either mainstream news or completely whacked out news, like the most completely insane ideas. Like, those are the people that get the most views now, not those that are looking independently down the middle, looking at both sides of information and attempting to bring the most plausible information to the table in the most, in a way that doesn't cause extremes on either side. Like let's look for the rational explanation of this. That's not what the algorithm typically promotes anymore. So welcome to Leak Project, ladies and gentlemen. I'm glad you're here. This is interesting, very interesting. So the policy could severely reduce transparency of military operations, oversight, and accountability if media must wait for Pentagon approval to report even unclassified developments. Reporters may self-censor to avoid losing access, which could shift coverage towards safer official narratives and away from investigative or critical reporting. The threat of losing credentials is a powerful leverage point. Denial or access can materially limit what a journalist can see, hear, or report from inside defense facilities. Oh my gosh, that's exactly how I've felt since 2017. 2018, it's gotten more and more difficult to share news without fear of being canceled. So we've had to look for alternative ways to talk about things. And it's like, I totally get that. Well, now I guess they're dealing with it even more so at certain levels. So welcome to my world. Like, how do you share information that is extremely important and doing it in a way that you can stay given the ability to share that information on various platforms? And like, that's what we've had to work with for many years. And it would be nice to see people being able to express their ideas more without the fear of that potential. If you do it in a peaceful manner, share information, ideas, ways to help people, etc. I mean, isn't that what it's about, this experience here on Earth, to be able to help people? Isn't that what we're here for? Humankind. Isn't that why we're called humankind? Because we're supposed to be kind to others and like stewards of the earth. I read a really interesting quote. I don't remember exactly how it went, but it said something along the lines of, the human race is the most bizarre race. They worship a God they can't see, and they destroy the God that they can see, referring to Mother Earth. Like, well, where do we get our food? Where do we get our clothes? Where do we get air, water, earth, fire, all that? It's like planet Earth. Hello. Yeah. I mean, it's anyway. So fascinating. That wasn't exactly the way it was said, but I totally got it. I'm like, yeah. I'm sure there's much more out there that we can't see, and like, creator of the universe, etc. Like what we would consider God is probably more than the earth, but it was just a very good, I would say definitely more than the earth, but a very, very fascinating metaphor there. I thought that was very interesting. So anyway, I digress. What else we got here? Argentina is negotiating a $20 billion bailout support package. And then we've got Venezuela. We've got Venezuela. Yeah. Military actions involving Venezuela. Strikes on drug vessels, maritime interdiction, September 2nd, 2025. President Trump announced the U.S. forces carried out an airstrike on a boat in the southern Caribbean. The strike reportedly took out 11 people, and that's one of many. So, yeah, a lot's going on right now. And what do you think about all this? Do you feel like we're at a position in a civilization, like our society is at the breaking point of something amazing with artificial intelligence and all this technology, or do you feel like we're at the cusp of potentially no return of like a combination of the Matrix meets Hellraiser, and then people are given pods to live out their lives in virtual reality worlds while data centers take over the majority of the resources that the earth provides, and then robots, then the robots will outnumber humans by like 2 to 1. Oh man. Oh, I hope not. Boomer boost. Yeah. All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. Really appreciate it. And thanks for listening. Please leave your comments in the comment section. Subscribe to us here on YouTube and subscribe to us over on Rumble. It'll take you like 90 seconds. And we do live shows on Rumble as well. We're actually live on Rumble right now. So jump on over to our Rumble page, hit the subscribe. They're pretty good at sending out notifications to our subscribers. So please subscribe over to us at Rumble and leave a comment, would you? In the comment section, just say hi, hit the bell, hit the thumbs up. Algorithms love that, and that helps Leak Project. And we have exclusive content on our Patreon page. So if you like Leak Project and if you want to get access to a library of uncensored, ad-free content with incredible guests, long format interviews, spanning back almost 10 years with amazing guests and information, jump on over to our Patreon page. Would love to see you on Patreon. And have a beautiful day, everybody. Keep being the change you want to see. Live action role play for entertainment purposes only. Any similarities are pure coincidence.